If we could, it is 9 o'clock. We want to get started. If you'll please take your seats. If you have iPhones or cell phones, whatever product you've got, if you would put it on silent, it would be most appreciated. And for the members up here in the horseshoe around the table, extra mics have been provided. So after you get through speaking, would you please turn them off? We may get some feedback. We've got some different mics. We have problems. We don't have mics. We have problems. We have mics. So, all right. Again, welcome to the Williamson County Growth Plan Update Coordinating Committee. We are going to go around the room one more time. Let everyone introduce themselves. I'll start with Greg, and then I'll go on over to Joe so that all the people in the audience know who's speaking. Also, what jurisdiction you represent would be appreciated when you introduce yourself. Greg?
My name is Greg Dale. I will be facilitating the meeting here in a few minutes.
Joe? Let me see if we can't get a mic. I know there's one there, and we just write it down.
Joe Horn, Community Development Director, Williamson County Government.
You can turn that mic off. Can't hear you.
Three's a charm. Joe Horn, Community Development Director, Williamson County Government.
Jason Gold, Superintendent for Williamson County Schools.
Ed Cassidy, City Administrator, Spring Hill.
Pete Hughes, Development Director, City of Spring Hill.
Patrick Carter, I'm the City Attorney for the City of Fairview and for the City of Spring Hill.
Michael Wood, I'm the Community Development Director for Thompson Station.
Andrew Mills, Town Attorney for Thompson Station. Brian Sober, Mayor of Thompson Station.
Ethan Greer, City Planner, City of Fairview.
Lisa Anderson, Mayor, City of Fairview.
Eric Nettle, Development Engineer, Middle Tennessee Lake.
Kristen Corrin, City Attorney, Brentwood.
Mark Gorman, Mayor, City of Brentwood.
Bob Lehman, City of Brentwood, Planning Director.
Emily Wright, City of Franklin, Planning Director.
Shauna Billingsley, City Attorney for the City of Franklin.
John Shore, I just represent Franklin on the board.
Eric Stuckey, Franklin City Administrator.
Healy Gallion, Mayor for the Town of Nolensville.
Victor Lay, Town Manager, Nolensville.
Judy Herbert, Second District County Commissioner.
Chas Morton, 9th District County Commissioner.
Robert Gregg, representing Soil and Water Conservation Board.
Jeff Mosley, Williamson County Attorney.
Mike Madison, Planning Director, Williamson County.
Christy Ransom, the County Attorney for Planning and Environment.
Thank you. So what we're about to enter into next will be our public. Trish, do we need more chairs? Have we got more chairs that we can fill in the back? Thank you. So we're going to enter into our public comment time, outlining the rules again for our public comment time. The total amount of time will be 30 minutes. Depending on how many people we have signed up, Mike?
14.
We have 14 people signed up. That's about 2 minutes each. And I will be monitoring that from the front table up here. At the end of the 30 minutes, the committee will do the approval of the minutes, which are at your desk. Thanks, Mike. And then after that, we'll have jurisdiction updates and questions for the draft documentation we're moving forth with today. Doesn't mean we'll complete it, but it's another time we'll have an opportunity to hear discussion. So at this time, I'll try to do it like we did last time, keep somebody in the wings so we can keep it going. The first individual speaking is Mr. Justin Lanning. Mr. Lanning, if you'll come up, and after him, following him will be Jeff Harris, and after Mr. Harris will be Tanel Mercher. So we got the three ready? Be careful when you come in. You might want to walk in front. There's wires and tapes over here. Mr. Lanning.
Thank you, Justin Lanning, 1725 Barker Road, Thompson Station. But speaking about the Spring Hill Northwest UGB, we are grateful for the process to communicate with each one and the thoughtfulness everyone's putting in. Really want to make sure on the diligence. You're going to hear today that Spring Hill voted to remove just a portion of the Northwest UGB that was communicated last time. They were willing to remove the entire thing. And it was the process was a little bit funky. After we were in communication, the communication was a resolution was coming up to remove the entire section. And then what happened after public comment was finished up, there was an amendment proposed by one of the aldermen to offer another option to remove only a portion. And then it was communicated that there would be about three options. One to remove a portion of it, one to remove all of it, or one to remove none of it. The first vote they took was to remove just a portion of it. And since it carried, they didn't get to vote on removing the entire thing. The other thing about that is in the published notes, a map was produced afterwards that no one got to see. We would have changed our public comments had we seen this. In this map, there's a pretty significant error that they say they removed along Barker Road, but there's a whole section of Barker Road missing from the highlighted map. There's also a property that's on Barker Road that's not included in the map. So I think there's some confusion in some last second, and several of the Bowman members were confused and or frustrated with the way the process worked. So we really want to consider that. The other two quick things is we spoke with 93 out of 1,800 acres. We spoke with over 1,650 acres of that 1,800 acres who are opposed. The others we just haven't been able to get in touch with. So those people were left out, very frustrated. Thank you. The last part of this that I want to make note is you'll hear something about stormwater and storm drainage. Looking at all the GIS systems in that region, there are 3 dry creeks with some fingerlings. So storm runoff runs down that. In those fingerlings, they run into retention ponds. You'll then hear the thing shift to underground water, but underground water, you're not going to develop a development or any home down into the groundwater. So appreciate your consideration to remove the entire Northwest UGB.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, and then following is Ms. Mercher, and then after that is Mr. Mercher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you everyone for being here and listening to what we have to say. We appreciate all the hard work that you put into all of this to make this the best possible scenario for the county and the cities that are involved. You heard our voices last month, and we appreciate the support. You went back and said, listen, Spring Hill, can you take another shot at this? And they did. You just heard Mr. Lanning talk about the work that's been put into this. Those in Spring Hill have chosen to take their own path, unbeknownst to us. We were willing to work with them. As Mr. Lanning said, we were in communication with them, and they chose behind closed doors to make a decision to not work with us. In less than a week's time, the entire community in that northwest section of the Spring Hill UGB, we talked to every resident possible other than those who were just not in the area or had passed away this year. So we absolutely went to every effort, to every single door, to try to make sure that we understood whether they wanted to be in or did not want to be in the Spring Hill UGB. It was an overwhelming response. Absolutely not. We do not want to be. And we're talking about multi-generational farms and people that have been out there. We spoke to those individuals, and they have spoken to their children that will inherit that property. They chose, no, we do not want to be in the Spring Hill UGB. And last night's meeting, as Mr. Lanning had mentioned, they made a decision to swap some things out after we've had our public comment. You, as the deciding members here, we would implore you and ask that you please go back, push this back and deny this of Spring Hill. I don't know that they were exactly forthright. We were willing to work with them, but we did not hear from them other than thank you, other than they wanted to do it their way. So if you don't mind, please reject this and send this back to them so that they don't get this northwest section. You, as those people in government, can make those decisions, and we ask that you represent us as residents of Williamson County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Next is Ms. Mercer, and then following will be Mr. Mercer, and after that, Mr. Curtis Borntrader. Thank you.
Got all the hard names today for you. Good morning. My name is Tennille, and I reside in the Harpeth Woods subdivision of Franklin. I am grateful for the opportunity to address this special coordinating committee. At the last meeting, some of you had asked for a more visual map of the area around Harpeth Woods and the rural county. Please open the binders that you have in front of you, at least the 16 of the committee. Please open the binders and review the map of the Thompson Station for reference. The aqua green is the proposed UGB borders, and the section with the green dots is of the far right side is east of Lewisburg Pike, and that is the area that we want removed. I want to remind you of the statement that Mr. John Schroer said the last meeting. One person shouldn't be able to change the whole character of a neighborhood or an area. And the only way they can do that is if they're in the urban growth boundary. This is a huge impact to our schools and our questions, without questions. Now let's look at the brown sliver that you see on the right-hand side. This was a property that was sold and now owned by the Estates of Harpeth, LLC. This developer had the property rezoned from agricultural, that was agriculture for over 100 years, to residential 27 months ago when they bought it. That is the one developer that is affecting the entire area. Neighbors and I went door to door to the affected properties east of Lewisburg Pike and asked every single one of them if they wanted to be a part of the Thompson Station proposed UGB. And out of the 85 owner-occupied properties, we received 78 notarized signatures from the concerned owners who wanted to be removed immediately. The remaining 7 just weren't home. So let me repeat that. Of the 85 owner-occupied homes, 91.7% have signed, notarized, and recorded with the county their written request to be removed. As many of them expressed, if we wanted to be in the city, we would have bought in the city. We moved to the county for a reason. Let Thompson Station focus on the current projects that they already have approved and the lack of the infrastructure first. So, is it need or greed? Is this one developer who bought 90 acres more valuable than the 78 owners with 462 acres? Thank you.
Mr. Haffner. After him would be Curtis. Next, after Mr. Borranger, I'm butchering that name, I apologize. After him will be Mr. Haffner.
My name's Adam Melcher, and I reside in the Harpeth Woods subdivision. In the interest of time, we'll cut straight to the chase. Most of you probably already know that the population of Thompson Station is roughly 8,200. These numbers are public and easy to find online. What you may not already know, though, is that within their current urban growth boundary borders, they have already approved at least 3,200 more homes that are in various stages of construction. In plain English, this translates to an additional 10,220 residents, including 2,300 additional students. Independence High School and Thompson Station Elementary School are already at 96 and 97% capacity. Now, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about what they've already approved. This committee, however, can stop the madness from continuing. By allowing us to be removed from the Thompson Station urban growth boundary, you are putting the brakes on this runaway train. You are ensuring our schools can handle the current growth of Thompson Station and still provide enough school funding for your schools and the neighborhoods that focus on quality of life instead of quantity of life. Make no mistake, we are all fighting for our homes and the preservation of what makes our county so desirable. If we lose our fight, so do you, but on a much larger scale. If we win, your constituents win as well. We have collected almost 900 petition requests to allow us to be removed from the UGB. And as my wife mentioned, a staggering 91% of owner-occupied homes in our area have registered and notarized their requests, yet we are still in it. This is not need, this is greed. So I ask that one of our amazing District 2 commissioners formally ask Thompson Station to justify lawfully their reasons for keeping us in it. And if they cannot do this, they must take us out. If anybody else in the audience agrees, please stand. Thank you.
Next, we have Curtis, and then Mr. Henry Hafner, and after that is Thomas Stevenson.
Hello, my name is Curtis Borntrager, and I live in the Harpeth Woods subdivision. I have developed properties myself and know that growth can be great for a community, but only if it is structured correctly. Thompson Station, you must be wondering, what in the world started all of this? Here is your answer. Listen closely. When the First Bank Amphitheater tried to open their concert venue through the county and got denied, they ran to Thompson Station, and Thompson Station said absolutely. When Thompson Station said yes to the concert venue, they said yes to devaluing our homes. They said yes to trapping us like prisoners in our own home for hours. They said yes to creating the black eye of Williamson County, and they said yes to jeopardizing our lives. I have some good friends that live in my neighborhood. A little over a week ago, in the middle of the night, one of them had to be rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery. I'm thankful it didn't happen, or thankful that it happened when it did, because had it happened earlier, this story could have been a very different ending. The reason I say this is because we live only a mile down the road from First Bank Amphitheater, and when they are sold out, traffic is at a standstill. What did Thompson Station expect to happen when you add thousands of cars to an already busy road with only one lane going in each direction and no shoulder space? I, along with many other people, have called Thompson Station and told them how much of a threat this is. They absolutely know they are jeopardizing the safety of the people who live around the concert venue, and yet they still approved it. We simply don't trust Thompson Station or the decision that they are willing to make when our basic need for safety is not met. I would love to limit ticket sales to take some of the pressure off of the roads. Whether that is possible or not is a discussion for another time. Allowing Thompson Station to include this area inside their UGB is allowing them to rezone the very lands that the county has been protecting for years. This will allow builders to build denser subdivisions, which will only add to the problem. By removing us and all the other property owners who have also requested in writing to be removed from Thompson Station UGB, you are stopping this dangerous land grab and slowing down the number of additional cars on the roads until they can be widened. Please allow Harpeth Woods and the surrounding properties concerned about our health and well-being and our friends and neighbors who may not be as lucky as last week's incident to be removed from the Thompson Station UGB. Thank you.
Mr. Hafner, Mr. Stevenson, and County Commissioner Hester. Mr. Hafner?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henry Hafner, and I own a farm at 2795 Owl Hollow Road. Owl Hollow Road is situated in between I-65 and Lewisburg Pike, and the folks from Spring Hill referred to this at the last meeting as prime growth area. Well, I just want the folks in Spring Hill to know that when you're referring to that, you're talking about our homes. My family has lived there for 70 years. And many of my neighbors have lived there much longer than that. It's an agricultural community. That's how we make our living. Now, since the last meeting, we've actually been canvassing. We've talked to all of the residents that at least that we were able to get in contact with in this entire proposed expansion of Spring Hill's UGB. Of those, it's about 140 residents. Of those, you can see listed here in red, they were overwhelmingly opposed. 91% opposed to being included in this and asked to be removed. Some of these are generational farms like ours who aren't exactly excited about seeing an industrial park going next to where they graze their cows or raise their crops. But some of these are actually new residents as well who've moved out to the country for the lifestyle. They did not want to live in the city, and they don't want to be overtaken by Spring Hill. So those of you who are voting on the commission, we ask you to hear. The response is overwhelming here, and we have copies of this map if any of you would like to. Some of you already have it. And we ask you to remove us from the UGB. There's plenty of work for Spring Hill to do in its current already established UGB, and there's no need to grow into an area that against the wishes of the residents who were there. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Hester, Dana Frick, and then Michael Cassidy. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Betsy Hester. I'm one of the 2 county commissioners in District 2, and I represent many people in, thank you, sir. I represent people in Thompson Station, Spring Hill, City of Franklin. I believe in planning. I believe in communication. It's vital to know that the state of Tennessee does not borrow money for their roads. That includes Columbia Pike, Lewisburg Pike, and 840. The state of Tennessee does not float bonds. They don't borrow money for state roads. What does that mean? It means it takes a long time to get progress, widening, and other situations on state roads. What does this also mean? Planning. Lewisburg Pike, Columbia Pike, 840. They're not going to change overnight. Also, human wastewater disposal, proper disposal is very, very expensive. What does that mean? You have to be very, very careful and plan accordingly. Your neighbor does not want to smell the refuge of your adjacent town. The Planning Commission of various cities need to listen to their urban growth individuals who are in the urban growth planning area. Again, communication is vital. Please consider these facts when you are considering urban growth boundaries. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think I may overlook Mr. Stevens. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Stevenson. I live on Jensam Lane in the Harpeth Woods subdivision. Thank you again for allowing public comment, and thank you for the supportive comments from leaders in the last meeting here. I want to address a few things from the last meeting here. First of all is that I expected to show up here last time and have residents from across the county speaking in opposition to multiple UGBs, but as we've seen, that's not what happened. It was only opposition to Thompson Station and Spring Hill. This should communicate something very strongly to this committee. We simply have an issue of 2 municipalities in this county who have consistently disregarded citizen concerns and have completely lost our trust. Another item that was brought up that Thompson Station has repeatedly mentioned is wanting to avoid donut holes. And as someone here on the committee pointed out last time, this is not a citizen problem. This is a Thompson Station problem. The only reason we in the Harpeth Woods subdivision would fall into a donut hole is because Thompson Station has already annexed land around us without community input and against the desire of many who were directly affected. The First Bank Amphitheater and the Ferrari property on Bethesda Road are prime examples. This is a problem that Thompson Station has created, and now they're placing the burden on us as citizens. That's not our fault, it's yours. Third is that it was suggested that we in opposition don't understand this process and that we're conflating annexation and the UGB process. Frankly, it's insulting to suggest that we can't comprehend this process because we know exactly what we're fighting against. We're fighting against the Thompson Station UGB because we're fearful of what the eventual outcome will be. Annexation against our will at one point or another. Their track record has proven that this will be the outcome. Simply saying that we don't have to worry about being annexed without consent is either a concerningly simplistic view of the situation or a willfully dishonest one. By keeping us in the UGB, we're vulnerable to both of those possibilities in the future. We once again strongly urge you to remove Harpeth Woods, Harpeth Paytonsville, Bethesda, and West Harpeth from the Thompson Station UGB. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Frick, then we have Mr. Cassidy, and after that, Mr. White.
Hi, my name is Dana Frick. Last night, I emailed the committee members the supporting public documents to express my concerns and the concerns of my neighbors about additional land being moved into Thompson Station's urban growth boundaries. I spent over 10 hours finding and reviewing and summarizing these documents. It's information that can't be covered in 2 minutes, and I found out regretfully this morning it's so much source documentation it was too large to be sent in a zip file. I believe my biggest takeaway from that exercise yesterday is we need full-time, dedicated resources to be the gateway for urban growth development in Williamson County, not a town of 8,000 whose mayor already has a full-time job. My question to you is now the time to approve so much land be allotted into Thompson Station urban growth boundaries, or should the status and capacity of their wastewater treatment system be subject to an independent impact study? Question 2, does Thompson Station have a balanced plan of growth to develop all of Williamson County infrastructure and not just focus on their wastewater deficit problems? And 3, is there a more efficient way to give us in the urban growth boundaries a voice for residents? Please, we're having to lean on other areas, other municipalities, and this committee for assistance because we don't get the transparency from Thompson Station. Thank you for your time and for your consideration of how much land goes into their urban growth boundary.
Thank you, Ms. Frick. Next, Mr. Cassidy. Following Mr. Cassidy is Mr. White, and on deck is Kathy Green. Mr. Cassidy.
Good morning. My name is Michael Cassidy, and I've been a Williamson County resident for over 20 years. I live at Laurel Hill subdivision off of West Harpeth. First of all, I'm not opposed to growth, but I am opposed to high density growth. In the late 90s, my wife and I relocated to Middle Tennessee. We wanted a nice neighborhood where we could run, walk, and where I could ride my bicycle from my driveway. We chose to live in Forest Crossing subdivision near the Forest Crossing golf course. For many years, I'd ride my bicycle from Forest Crossing to downtown over on Del Rio, Carlisle, 96 West, and Old Boyd Mill Road. At that time, Del Rio was a destination route for area bicyclists. Today, due to the large growth and increased density, I would not risk riding a bicycle on Del Rio or the routes off Highway 96 West near West Haven. 17 years ago, we moved to Laurel Hills subdivision off of West Harpeth. I've regularly left my neighborhood and rode my bike on West Harpeth, Sedberry, Thompson Stations Road, Carter's Creek, and out Leaper's Fork. Of course, there's normal high traffic patterns in the mornings and late afternoons, but it's still a safe rural place to ride a bike, walk, or go for a run. It concerns me that Williamson County is allowing Thompson Station to potentially change the zoning laws to increase the density of homes near West Harpeth. I am concerned that just like Del Rio and Highway 96, we will no longer be able to enjoy the rural character of West Harpeth Road in the surrounding area. Again, I am not opposed to growth, but I am opposed to high-density housing and have no interest in living in the Thompson Station urban growth area. Thank you for allowing me to voice my concerns.
Watch your step. Thank you, Mr. Cassidy. Next is Mr. White. Then we'll move on to Miss Kathy Green. I'm sorry? Oh, he's in transit. Then we'll go on to Kathy Green. Next is James Sadler. After Mr.
Hi, I'm Kathy Green again, and I'm a multi-generation resident of Williamson County. And I want to talk to you about the two southern the two southern cities that are affecting us. Spring Hill for years didn't seem to have a plan. I don't know that they have a plan now, but they seem to be trying to play catch up. That is not our problem. They didn't have property taxes for years, several years. They've reinstated those. But now they want to put, and I confirmed this by asking the Spring Hill rep last time, evidently a distribution center and an airport. When I asked her about the airport, I expected that to be shot down because that was a rumor. She said something about the FAA had told her that's where it needed to go. 2 years ago, one of the aldermen had posted a road plan, and I asked him, I said, how are you going to build a road through Owl Hollow? That's not in Spring Hill. And he said, well, we'll have to work with other municipalities. Apparently, all along, they had a plan to annex this area, and they don't want to build industrial next to their residents, but they want to come out and build it next to people who've had farms for 200 years in the area and run trailer trucks by there. So let's talk about Thompson Station. Thompson Station, when they started this, I was talking to one of them and they told me I would be more protected through them because they had 8 acres versus 5 in the county. So I asked them to explain to me Crites Lane, because Crites Lane not that long ago was solid farmland. All it is they rezone one farm, the next farmer doesn't want to live next to 700 rooftops. He sells out, they rezone and upzone it. So another example of them doing improper zoning, in my opinion, is the concert hall. Last Friday night at 8 o'clock, there was dead stop traffic still on 840. It took a friend of mine 20 minutes to get down a ramp in Painesville because everybody's trying to go home another way. So we ask you not to allow them to let this continue.
Thank you. Mr. White? Mr. White, and the final person after Mr. White will be Jane Sadler. Mr. White, what's your step?
We meet again. I own a piece of property in the Mays Creek Basin. I'm probably more affected by this meeting than anybody in Williamson County. And I found out about this meeting 20 minutes ago and dropped everything to come. I have been working closely with the city, with Mr. Stuckey and Mayor Moore. Couldn't be anybody that is more of a pleasure for me to work with than these gentlemen, because I think they're really trying to do what is right now in Mays Creek Basin. It looks like they're legit. We've been in the urban growth boundary for 20 years and there's no services, there's no plan for services, but I think the city is really going to make an effort now. We want to stay in the urban growth boundary. We want to ultimately be annexed by the city, but here's what my problem is. 11 months ago, we filed an application with the city to be provided services, and we're trying to build a rural retreat that would be something along the lines of South Hall, but a poor man's South Hall. We want to create an educational opportunity for urban kids to have the experience of being in an agricultural area. We're totally good with being 70% open space. We've built an equestrian facility out there, but our application has been pending for 11 months. And there's no, 2 minutes, okay.
10 seconds.
10 seconds. Okay, I just want to reach out to Mr. Stuckey and Mayor Moore and let you know that we support what the city's doing. We want to work with the city, but we've got to have some interim relief, what we can build something until we are annexed.
What's your step? Thank you. Final individual is Jane Sadler.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jane Sadler, and I reside at 4650 Gander Branch Road, Thompson Station. I tell people that this is a no man's land. We are county, but the decisions of the City of Franklin, Town of Thompson Station, and City of Spring Hill have a direct impact on our quality of life. However, none of them concern themselves with their impact on us, as we are not in their voting block. Let me state, I do understand the difference between urban growth boundaries and annexation. However, we all need to be honest with one another. Annexation follows UGB. Developers are buying up land in small and large tracts all around us. And because they are the owners of that land, they can and most likely will request annexation. And they will approach the municipality that will give them the highest density with minimal requirements. And as we're seeing, it tends to be Spring Hill and Thompson Station. As we've seen lately, developers prefer to be annexed by either the Town of Thompson Station or the City of Spring Hill because both entities, while stating in their UGB growth plans that they are intent on protecting the rural character of the land, neither has proven that they are doing so. What concerns me about this whole process is I'm not seeing all-in numbers. Both Thompson Station and Spring Hill are planning for double-digit growth, and they believe the best way to protect their towns is to focus on grabbing land. But no municipality has discussed the implications to our schools, our sheriff's departments, the various municipality police departments, fire departments, ambulance services, and county road maintenance. Currently, and I was looking on the Town of Thompson Station website when I got these numbers, the Town of Thompson Station has approved 1,500 residential units using their current census numbers of 2.9 residents. That means 4,350 residents. This will add 1,450 students to our school system. The municipalities of Thompson Station and Spring Hill need to stay within their current footprint. They need to focus on their current infrastructure, get it up to date, and then look at growing. Many on this board speak of protecting the rural character of Williamson County, but that will not be achieved with high growth, gridlocked roads. We're asking for a well thought out planning process.
All right, that concludes. Have we any time left out of the 30 minutes?
We're actually at 40, but.
All right, we're past the time you didn't sign up. All right, the public hearing is now closed. The next order of business will be for the committee to approve the minutes from the August 29th meeting that we had here. I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes as being presented. Proper motion, second. Do I have any corrections, deletions? Had time to read them? Ready to vote for the committee? Accepting the minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, let the records reflect it passed unanimously for the minutes. Greg, the show is yours now.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning.
Nobody wants to talk.
Okay, so coordinating committee, this is your time now. So let me describe what we intend to try to do here today and where we see this is going. And just for those who are new to this process, my name is Greg Dale. I'm with McBride Dale Clarion, which is a planning and zoning consulting firm that's worked with the county and many of the municipalities off and on over the years. For the purposes of today's meeting, my role here is to facilitate this discussion. But coordinating committee, this is your process, this is your meeting, and we're going to be asking you to start to deliberate some of these issues today. So three things we want to try to do today. One is to hear reports back from two of the jurisdictions about some of the property that's been discussed here. Both Spring Hill and Thompson Stations are prepared to report on some new information and new things that have happened. Please do prepare yourself. We are going to ask you to deliberate a little bit today for the purpose, and here's what we would like, again, your meeting, but what we would like to see come out of this meeting is direction from the coordinating committee as to what map to put into the draft plan that would come back to you at the next meeting, which I think is scheduled for October 13th. Because at that time, or sometime soon after that, the coordinating committee will need to approve a plan or recommend a plan for the purpose of your public hearings. The jurisdictions have had their public hearings. You all know that you will have 2 public hearings as well. So that's what we're looking for today, is some direction as to what map you want to see in the plan for the purpose of public hearings. Remember, that plan consists of 2 things, or will consist of 2 things. One is the map, and obviously that's what is of most concern here today. And then there will be a narrative description that will be a description of many of the things that you've already talked about. We've been through this before, but for the folks in the audience, things like the guiding principles that you all agreed to early in the process, the implementation strategies, the idea of revisiting this in 5 years, of agreeing to no annexation outside the growth areas, and of a continuing advisory group indefinitely into the future that meets on some sort of regular semi-annual basis or something like that we can talk more about. That's where we are in the process. And just to remind you, from there, after you have those public hearings, it will come back to you for consideration. And at that point, you can choose to modify or amend or not modify the plan. I'm sorry, that will come back to you for consideration. You can choose to tinker with the plan, modify the plan, or what have you. And at some point, you will then approve a plan and transmit that plan to the jurisdictions for their consideration. At that point in time, when you transmit that plan, the clock stops ticking for your work, and then the clock starts ticking for the jurisdictions, who then have 120 days to act to either ratify or not ratify that plan. So that's the basic process, and from there it goes to the state local government committee for review. Everybody clear on the process on the coordinating committee level? Okay, we've gone over this many times, so it shouldn't be news to you. So what we would like to do now is to have, well, let me just show you a couple of other things here just for reference if we need to talk about this. We have the existing growth area plan. We have the proposed boundaries as those boundaries have been recommended by the jurisdictions. And then we sent this last week just to give you kind of a locator map to get you familiar with some of the areas that we've been talking about here. And then from there, what we'd like to do is to ask, that it doesn't matter who comes up, Spring Hill, why don't you plan to go first and talk about those. And if you remember, what you all asked these jurisdictions to do is to basically come back with more information, come back with the rationale for why they've done what we've done. In the case of Spring Hill, you're going to hear that they've made a change to the growth boundaries, and Pam Caskey is going to describe that.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, this one? All right, there we go. Okay. So thank you very much. At the last meeting, we talked about there's actually 3 sections to the Spring Hill urban growth boundary. Currently, Spring Hill has 0 growth boundary in Williamson County. All of our growth boundary is in Murray County. And I think that happened just because how long ago it was when Williamson County last did a growth boundary update. The first section that doesn't seem to be having any dispute is that we have donuts where we have annexed around properties in Williamson County. Those are currently not in a growth boundary. So this would put all of those properties in our growth boundary, which makes sense. We're surrounding them. The second portion of the growth boundary is on the east side. You heard some people speak from the Owl Hollow area. This would be the area that would affect them. We currently have, the city is currently exists over and a little finger over to Lewisburg Pike, and then we have a full growth boundary and city limits into that same general area in Murray County. This would tie those together. It is absolutely due to the investment the city has made in infrastructure there to maintain that area in our urban growth boundary. So the piece that is left for discussion is what we're calling the northwest quadrant or the northwest corner. That is what's depicted on the map. The area that is in blue is currently the proposed, as is the portion in yellow. And unbeknownst to us, apparently there's a piece north of that that we didn't have on our maps that were on the maps here. However, given the decision of the board, I don't know that it matters. At the meeting last night, after a couple of meetings of discussion, they voted 7-2 to remove the portion that is in yellow. That is the smaller, more densely settled area that would be really considered Burwood. And those, so everything north, the yellow and north, we would ask that this board, this committee consider removing that. We did not make a change to our plan. We instead asked you to do it for us, more as a matter of time since the clock had already started. The two members that voted against it because they were in favor of removing it all. So there was unanimous approval to remove what was there. Two people just wanted to remove more of it. The question is, do we have the capacity to serve this? We certainly are not going to have any capacity to serve this in some time, and I'm very comfortable with removing the area that is there. The board felt like that they needed to protect the area that was already adjacent to urban growth boundary in Murray County. And so this basically ties that off and makes the Murray County and the Williamson County sort of contiguous, or yeah, contiguous is the right word. So that was the decision for that, and it also is closer up against our city limits. So that was their recommendation. It would take a vote by you, I believe, to amend the map to remove the area that is in yellow and north would probably be the appropriate motion should that be made. Can I ask for questions? Anybody have any questions that I need to answer? Yes.
So the blue area, was there a vote taken on the blue area?
There was not a vote taken on the blue area. A board member made the motion to, we put the gentleman that spoke, I proposed a conversation on removing all of the blue area, leaving all the blue area, or just removing the yellow area. A board member made the motion to just remove the yellow area, and it passed. So there was no discussion on removing all of the blue area. So I know two other board members specifically voted against it because they wanted to remove it all, but they would have removed, had they only had that option, it would have been a unanimous vote to remove the yellow, but they would have preferred to remove all the blue. But the remaining of the board voted not to remove the blue because they voted to accept the yellow. Is that clear as mud? It was clear as mud to me last night too, just for the record.
And then I think previously you'd shown said the area beneath the currently shown blue, that becomes Murray County.
That is in our Murray County growth boundary. So we have a fairly extensive, in my opinion, maybe too extensive, of growth boundary in Murray County and none in Williamson. So this kind of ties it off to the west.
I have a concern. I've heard from a lot of folks that are here and then others that don't have a voice in whether they're included in this UGB or not. And that's just kind of troubling from the perspective of they can speak, but they don't have an opportunity to elect or unelect those officials in that municipality. And so from my perspective, and I'm just one, but I would think that including someone in your UGB, it would be best if they wanted to be in the UGB, and it would probably be okay if they didn't oppose it. But what I'm hearing is there's a lot of opposition from people about being included in this UGB. And I understand as well that it's the start of annexation. And it's a way to upzone as well property to have higher density and those type of things. But it just doesn't square with me that this committee would forcibly bring folks in that don't have a voice as it relates to the UGB.
If I could counter with that.
Yes, ma'am, please do.
I think this is not necessarily going to be a popular opinion, so I'm glad I don't have to run for election. But I think the question is, are governments going to plan or are citizens going to elect? And as ownership changes, then will the plan change? And so, I mean, if you think about how every other city has grown, they've done so by doing the planning themselves. Why does Franklin not have a lot of people here complaining about their growth? Well, because they've already had their growth. They've already gone through this process, okay? They've already grown from, I remember Franklin when they were 10,000 people, and now they're 85,000 people, and that's been in my lifetime. Actually, it's been in my adult lifetime. So they've already done this expansion, and they did it by planning and growing. If you were to allow every property owner to completely control the way land develops, that's not planning at all. That's reactive. The right person comes in with the right plan, and they get to decide how their plan is being used. So the whole purpose of an urban growth boundary is for a municipality to be able to plan for the future. And if you go through and go, okay, this one doesn't want in, and this one doesn't want in, and this one doesn't want in, well, then where are you? So, I mean, I think the whole purpose of this process is for a city to look to its future and to plan. And yes, the citizens have a voice, and that includes the citizens that are not in the cities. They're in the unincorporated areas. I think that's important. But if you don't go through some process where somebody makes smart decisions about infrastructure, about capacity, about needs, then you don't have any planning at all. You are just being reactive to whatever the landowner of the day wants. And everything is great. Everything is great until somebody sells the property. And then things change. And that's the challenge. If nobody sells their property, we're good. Because there's not going to be any annexation. The problem is what happens when they do. And then you start getting, and you can still petition to be annexed even when you're outside an urban growth boundary. You know, there's a process for coming in. In fact, I think Thompson Station just did it. So there is a process. This isn't the only way. But I think it is the best way. That's the purpose of it.
Yes, ma'am, I understand I will respectfully disagree with you, and that's okay. We went through a voluntary annexation just recently in the area between us and Williamson. It's where the property owner came to us and said, hey, we would like to be part of the city. Does the city have services that they can provide? And we said yes, and it made sense. But we have not forcibly put people in our UGB. And I just have concern because we've got folks that don't have representation. And what we in Brentwood may believe is smart growth or balanced and responsible growth and not outrunning our infrastructure may be different to folks that are in the county in an unincorporated area. May be different, just a moment. But I can't go along with, hey, we are government, we know best. And I know the property rights are something that are very sacred. And if someone says that they don't want their property to be included, I have a lot of respect for that, and I cannot tread on those property rights.
I appreciate your opinion. I think that's a new opinion, or Brent wouldn't be where it is. And I think every city grows at a different rate at a different time. And obviously Spring Hill's late to the party in the growth issue. And so, and just so you know, we've actually now had 3 requests for annexation come into the city, and the city have denied them because we are not yet ready to accept that growth. So we've turned annexations in our urban growth boundary down because we weren't ready for them. So we have been doing responsible planning.
All right, let's see if we have other questions.
Just a moment, I'm not quite finished, thank you. We are all stakeholders in the county, and we have to hold each other accountable to not overrun our infrastructure. What I hear from my constituents in Brentwood is there are limited, scarce resources related to infrastructure, which are schools, roads, public safety, water, sewer, those type of things. When we start to overrun those infrastructure issues, it causes stress and problems for other municipalities. And so we just have to have balanced and responsible growth. And I'm not lecturing you on how you should grow, but what I'm saying is if there are folks that are in the county that don't want to be part of that UGB, that's not something that I can sign up for voting in favor of. I'm just one. But I think we should listen to the folks that don't have a voice.
So what would you say to my citizens? What would you say to the citizens of Spring Hill who are putting $80 million on the table to create infrastructure in advance of the need? Would you say, so sorry, too bad?
I would say you probably need to reevaluate your plan to make sure that you match up that infrastructure with what the residents want.
Sorry, Mayor, copy on that. Other questions?
Quick question. So when we were at the meeting last time, there was discussion about removing the entire thing. What is the plan if we're going to revisit it in 5 years? Why can the whole blue not be removed?
Yeah. I don't have an answer for that because I don't get a vote on the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So I was expecting the board to have that discussion. They did not. They voted for the alternative of just a portion of it last night. That was their decision. I don't get a vote, and it was not heavily discussed last night.
So procedurally, at some point, either this meeting or the next meeting, this group will come to agreement on the map, and so that would be part of what?
I think that's a discussion you get to have as to whether you're going to, and let me make sure, Greg, if I could. So you're going to have the proposal today to discuss whether to accept the request of the BOMA of Spring Hill, because that's all it is a request to eliminate the yellow and north. You may choose to say yes to that. And then if you say, yes, but we also want to do all of the northwest quadrant, you could make that recommendation. And then that has to come back to each board in the form of a map. And then our board would get the right to turn the whole plan up or down on whether they agreed with your recommendation or not. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the map right now is on your table for you to do with as you wish, to take it to public hearings. And Pam is correct that it will then come back to you, whether it's changed or not, it's still going to come back to you for approval to go to the jurisdictions, to be transmitted to the jurisdiction for ratification. So right now the map is on your table. Okay?
I don't know that it's on your table. It's up, well, there, yeah.
That map. Yeah, I'm sorry. Procedurally, thank you, Mayor. Okay, other questions? Yes, Eric.
So, Pam, was there any specific explanation about why the yellow versus the blue? I mean, what differentiated, I know you referenced it a little bit, but why was that chosen versus all of it? Was there some rationale provided by the 7 that voted for it that might help us have an insight why you picked to remove that versus the entire area?
Fair question. Thank you for asking. The board member that proposed the yellow area requested that everybody that had been at the original July 17th public hearing, that area that affected the most of them be removed, and they were the smaller properties. They were smaller acreage properties. Therefore, the 5-acre separation wouldn't be an issue because they were already probably as subdivided as they were going to be. And one farm that was contiguous so that we wouldn't have funky shapes, that we would have a more contiguous boundary. So that farm owner was there, and then the Barker Road area was there. Again, those were all primarily smaller, under 10-acre properties. And so the max subdivision that could be done under the county would have been one more subdivision. And so the thought was that there would not be extensive development of those done. When you have an 80-acre farm, should it get developed, you still got 16 residents going there. And so that's what we were trying to avoid, was that sort of subdivision in the county. Does that make sense, Eric?
Eric, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I wanted to understand their rationale.
Okay, Commissioner.
I guess this is directed toward you more, a question. You know, all the other cities, there hasn't been any complaints from their residents except Spring Hill and Thompson Station. So is it possible to approve everybody else's and restrict Thompson Station and Spring Hill to their current urban growth boundaries?
Well, your again. Procedurally, let's be clear, procedurally, like I said, the map is figuratively on your table for you to massage as you see fit. Go to public hearings, bring it back. But keep in mind that if you approve a certain map and it goes to the jurisdictions for their ratification and any of those jurisdictions deny it, then the whole thing stops. Right? This is all in for everybody. It has to be all of the jurisdictions. So you can't say we're approving this for everybody but 2 jurisdictions who don't approve it, because then the whole thing stops.
So if we can't agree on Thompson Station, Spring Hill, that means no one else in the county gets to change their urban growth boundaries, right? They're
Correct.
affecting everybody else.
That is correct. Yes, that's my understanding, and I'm looking to the lawyers for that. Yes.
I guess my concern is Spring Hill sits there and states that we won't annex you unless you're okay with it. Well, then why are they planning for a road to go through Owl Hollow down the road? I mean, that's... And then you have Thompson Station that wants to take in all this property. Right now, they have no police, no fire, and every other citizen in this county is having to pay taxes to provide that for them.
I don't think this is directed at me, but I might remind you that right now, Spring Hill has 0 urban growth boundary. So when you say we're going to take away all the urban growth boundary from Spring Hill, every other city in this county had urban growth boundary of some form or fashion. We had none. Now, why that happened, I suspect it has everything to do with 20 years ago and where Spring Hill was in the county and how it was received in the county 20 years ago, because that was the last time we did this. But to now say, hey, you're the new guy on the block and you can't have anything, seems to be fairly unfair to Spring Hill, because we don't have any right now.
There are a few residents that are okay with being in your urban growth boundary that are next to the city, and I don't think that's an issue with anybody if you put them in.
So I guess the question is, then should we and I'm asking, and I know this is not going to be well received, but should we have just sent out an election request and say, if you want in our urban growth boundary, send it back in? Is that the way it was supposed to work? Because if not, why have we spent 9 months working on this?
The city of Franklin did.
They did? Eric, is that what you did? Did you send out an election request to say?
We didn't do an election, but we contacted every single resident and invited them.
So did we. Well, we attempted to contact every single resident.
Are there other questions or comments from the coordinating committee? Again, because what we're looking for you to provide us is direction as to what to include in the plan for consideration in October that would go to public hearings.
One question, you had mentioned, I think an $80 million project within Spring Hill for infrastructure. Can you sort of show me where on the map?
Can you give me a different map?
Yeah, I think the other map that shows a little bit
Yeah.
more Murray County
Yeah.
helps
Give me the other
me to
map. I can show you
understand
that.
where
Yes.
Spring Hill is and kind of what its thoughts are.
Yes. So can I zoom on this for you?
I don't think you can.
All right. Is there a laser pointer somewhere? Okay. Let me just try this.
Here, I'll use this microphone.
Okay. So if you will look at the dark blue that fingers out on the east side of 65, right there, that is the June Lake Boulevard intersection. When that interchange, the city went and got a $25 million bill grant from the feds to help with the building of that intersection. As part of that agreement, the city had to provide access both into Spring Hill and to Lewisburg Pike. And I don't know which came first. Victor could probably tell us whether we annexed and then did the interchange or whether we annexed in order to do the interstate connector. Do you know, Victor?
It was virtually at the same time.
So they did, so yeah, in order to do the interstate connector, which they had to do in order to get the interchange, they annexed. And the combination of everything there, the interstate connectors, the road improvements, the build grant, $80 million.
So the way that process worked, when the city was looking at trying to locate the interchange and the adjacent roads, we had reached out to contact the different property owners looking at different routes. There were 3 property owners that owned that entire stretch from 65 over to 431. And all 3 of those property owners were wanting that road to come through their property. That's why I actually went south Brinns Valley, did not want it on the north side of Brinns Valley, which was the original plan. And so we listened to them, moved to the south side of Brinns Valley. Those property owners were very interested in coming through there, so they actually requested annexation. They were outside our UGB, so we went to the county and said, okay, this is our situation. We've got 3 property owners who want inside the county, or want inside want inside the town limits because of this issue. We got permission from the county, and we went through the official annexation process by referendum.
And you did that by referendum because there was no UGB. And
That's correct, and that was, you know, that's the state law process.
Yep.
On this proposed map, just so I'm clear and everybody else is clear who's maybe not quite as familiar with this, can you point out where the yellow area is that we're talking about that's on the handout?
So the blue, let me go back to the blue area on the left, the light blue area on the left, if you would divide that into quarters, it's the upper left quadrant of that light blue area on this side.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Yeah. So if you'll take that, yeah. Okay, so if you'll take this one right here, that blue area, that light blue area that's in the circle, if you'll divide that into fourths, the upper left corner, that is the Barker Road primary area. That's the primary addresses of that. And that matches with the map that you saw earlier.
Yeah, sorry about the mapping complexity here. This literally happened last night.
Yeah, it did. We tried to get it done 2 weeks ago so we'd have time to work these out, and the board deferred it to last night. So.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that helped me on that part. And the other part is on the other side.
Yes, the other part is the other side. And there is a current economic development in the Murray County side. So south of that blue area, in the blue and in the white, which is in our Murray urban growth boundary, that area has a 800. Yeah, thank you. This area right here, down here, right here is a 1,200 acre industrial park with a potential transportation hub. So that is already approved and vested.
Could you go back to the map that has the yellow?
Yes, sir.
So this area right here apparently it was not on our GIS maps, and but we would consider all of this, everything north of that line, to be requesting it to be out of the urban growth boundary.
Yeah, let me address that because that may be our fault just from a GIS perspective. That area that she's talking about right there is also part of the area that would be proposed. And literally, when you look at it, if you took the yellow out, that area wouldn't be contiguous with it anyway.
Right. So yeah, it was all.
Right. That should all be yellow.
Jason.
I have a mapping question. What road frontage does the blue have? Is it Carter's Creek Pike on the far left?
Doc Robertson.
Doc Robertson is the north-south road in the center of this.
Yes, yes.
What about the far left? Does that have road frontage on Carter's Creek?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I think there's some Sugar Ridge in there as well.
Yeah, Sugar Ridge changes names to Parker as Doc Robertson splits it.
Yeah.
Right. So Sugar Ridge is all the curve on the right.
Yes.
It changes to Barker. I was just curious. I wanted to make sure I understood the far left side.
Okay, committee. Other questions? Yes, Mayor. Oh, yeah, thank you.
This map is what I'm concerned about. I'd like some information about all the citizens in red who do not want this in the Spring Hill urban growth boundary. So could you explain about this?
Yeah, I mean, this basically takes our city limits and ties it to our city limits on north and south sides. We are extended over into that area on the south side. We have urban growth boundary on the south side. We have city limits on the north side. This is what I would consider a potential area for development. Now, obviously, that's at the landowner's choice because we can no longer go out and annex by just decree. So it's going to have to be based on landowner request, but we certainly believe that this is an area that we expect to, over time, develop. And we have water and sewer that will be available there within the next 3 years. And as we've talked about, we have a massive road project that will be there. So we believe that this is an area where our citizens have invested in the infrastructure, and therefore they should have the ability to at least be the ones that are consulted in how it develops. Doesn't mean that they'll be in the city, but we believe it ought to be the ones that we develop. If all of those landowners do not want to be in the city, that's fine. They don't ever have to request annexation. And if you look at our donut holes in our city, we don't annex where people don't want to be. That's why we have donuts all over the city. So they'll be able to remain outside of the city for as long as they want to.
Do these citizens have a voice at your meetings?
They came and spoke. Just for the record, not many of the Al Hollow residents. I think we only had 1 or 2 Al Hollow residents speak at the public hearing. We had a few more last night, but they have been notified. They have been listened to.
Well, if there's this many people displayed in red that don't want to come in to the urban growth boundary, I mean, and this is going to be revisited in 5 years or whatever, I mean, I don't see that these people should have to be in the urban growth boundary now.
Yeah, I'm gonna play stupid, which is easy for me to do. Can we have better maps that have roads on them?
Yeah.
I mean, I've lived in this county since 1974, and I'm as confused as, I can hear people behind me saying, I don't even know where I live here. And for those of us that don't live there, it becomes really confusing. This is an important decision that this committee has to know. And I drove around a lot of that area the other day, just trying to recognize where I am. I live in Franklin, I don't go down there that much. And I think a lot of people are that way. So we've got to have better maps with roads, with reference points, so that we really can have an intelligent discussion.
On a website.
Not
at a meeting time.
Well, I mean, and really, never mind. Anyway, I think that's really important. The maps have been horrible.
Well, that's the fair point, and we will do whatever the coordinating committee directs us to do. Keep in mind, this has been a very dynamic process. That map that's held up with the red, we saw that was handed out today for the first time. None of us have seen that. And last night, the map that Pam's referring to, I didn't see until this morning. So it's moving quickly. But that's a fair comment, and we want to make sure that you have whatever you need to make an informed decision. Notwithstanding that, is there an ability of the coordinating committee to provide direction to us in terms of what to include in the map for consideration at the next meeting, the October 13th meeting? I think so, yeah. Any more questions for Pam? No, I'm sorry, I don't think, Roger, we have a hand from the crowd, but I don't think we're taking public comment at this point. So I'm sorry. Any other coordinating committee, any other comments or direction for us? Yes.
Can we do a poll to see if the majority of the coordinating?
Absolutely.
Can we do the poll to see where the majority of the coordinating committee is? I mean, since this hasn't been for 20 years, everybody that's voting on the committee hasn't done this before, so.
Correct.
It would be helpful to kind of hear Mayor Gorman where he's at, which I've been leaning towards where Mayor Gorman is, but to know where the majority is.
Sure, I'm absolutely fine with that. We can just go around the room, and you want to take them one at a time? Let's start the area on the west. And by that I mean,
what's the question? I'm not sure what the question is.
What you want us to show on the map, either this or what Spring Hill came up with last night, or all of the blue, or something different.
And if the committee is going to support changing urban growth boundaries that go back to the jurisdictions, or if they will likely stay the same.
And why don't we start with you, Mayor? I mean, you've got the mic. Let's do that.
So
and we're talking. Let's break them up here. So let's start with the one on the west here.
The one of the west, the area in the blue, obviously I think the yellow, since that was clearly from Spring Hill to remove is, in my mind, off the table. The remaining blue, if there's not a plan for the next 5 years and the agreement is to revisit it in 5 years, I'm supportive of what Mayor Gorman said, to remove that and what goes back to all of the jurisdictions. I have more questions. Okay, so just one at a time.
Yeah, let's just do them one at a time because it might be different. Let's come back here and just work our way around. Start with it. Mr. Ream? So the question is, what would your thought be on whether you would want to see that area included or not included or partially included?
I have a couple questions to answer, but I have to side with the people that live out there, and if they choose not to be, then I have to go with the people.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think given the current environment, I'd be inclined to see this entire blue area removed. I understand that there's entire approval on the yellow area, which isn't shown up here, but I'm sad that we didn't get to hear what Spring Hill's thoughts would have been on the entire blue area, but that procedurally what happens happens. But based on what I've heard, and as I understand Spring Hill's investment in infrastructure and kind of where it's headed, I do not see the need for the blue area at this time.
I guess my opinion is take all the birdwood out. And also any of that on Lewisburg Pike, which is almost all of it, that doesn't want to be in it. I think
Let's come back. We're going to come back. We're going to come back to that as a separate.
I
Yeah.
say take it all out.
Going around here to Mayor Moore. Mayor?
Take it down. Yellow's been removed. For the process standpoint, I have real reservations about it, but I don't know why you wouldn't continue to figure out how this fits in the bigger picture. So I have reservations, but I'm not sure I would remove it yet, but I have reservations about it moving forward.
Okay.
I will agree that one thing I will say is the BOMA had every opportunity to continue that discussion. They could have made another motion to discuss the blue area. Just because they voted on one doesn't exclude them from discussing the other options. And they should have done that. And I would have liked to have heard that discussion on their part. And so I still don't think we have enough information to make an educated decision on how we should proceed.
I sure hope that a couple of municipalities don't hang up this committee. However, I would be fine hanging up the committee until we get it exactly right. And so this definitely needs to be out. These folks don't want to be in the UGB. If Spring Hill needs to go back and revisit what their infrastructure spend is, and they don't like the way that their UGB is now, you can't impose your will on those that can't vote for you. So it needs to come.
I'm not comfortable with the light blue on the left or the light blue on the right being included. So I just feel like if infrastructure has been, money's been spent on that, then there's some type of plan, because I don't think the infrastructure would be, the money would be spent on it if there wasn't some type of plan in the works. So I want to know what that plan is, because why would infrastructure be proposed for an area that's not an urban growth boundary? Why would money be spent if there's not something in the works? So I'm uncomfortable with that.
Okay.
I would like to hear more information as to why this is being included from the Spring Hill BOMA. Kind of what's been said before, feel a little more comfortable understanding why it's being left in. So with more information, I think we can make better decisions.
as a threshold, our school board's commitment to themselves, and I want to honor this commitment, is to not make a decision until everything is heard. And so in this example, and all examples, that's an approach I'm taking. My questions surround services. We recognize that school services are the county responsibility. The county government funds about 2/3 of our per pupil expenditure in the state, about 1/3 of the time bit from federal. So the services that are provided in the residential, the projected residential growth are what concern us. We recognize schools have to come, but what about those other services, sewer, police, fire? So in this example and in every other example, what the questions I have surround that. What's the projection for providing sewer? What's the projection for providing police and fire? So that at least offsets some of the county government responsibility for serving growth, because they have that burden of serving the schools, which is such a substantial cost. So I've still got questions.
Greg, there's Kel McDowell is in the back. He's on the member. No, skip, okay.
Well, I think it's important we remember this is the process we're going through. This is the public hearing side of it. And my comments on the area in Spring Hill, it's hard to take a vote last night, try to piecemeal it in today, half of the people not have it, Greg. So whoever said better maps, better, I know it's a process you went through, Pam, and through your board. You probably finished up at 10 o'clock, but it's hard for me to not understand why they didn't deal, even though your main resolution was going to deal with, I guess, all of the blue and the yellow, and they only identified that. And I think it was Eric that commented, I'd love to hear their remarks. But this is a process, and I'm not comfortable voting for this the way that we're trying to do it. We cannot do that. Not only to the people, but we can't do it on a countywide service. And Jason's comments about schools and public services, they're eating our lunch just like they eat everybody else's lunch. And we can't continue to pick up those pieces from the county unless we know what's really happening. So the way it's drawn out, the long and short of it, I would say you'd have to take it out, Pam, or at least give us some discussion of how the other members got to this point and allow that blue area that's up there, let them to have a discussion on that. And finally, I will say, I think it's going to be very difficult for any of us when it gets to a time to vote to give a directive back. We're a coordinating committee. We're not an elected body. So if this coordinating committee makes recommendations, sends it back to the elected folks, the aldermen and the commissioners, they need to be comfortable with what's doing, because they're going to hear this conversation either through the city managers and the town planners and all of that.
Okay, so, yes.
I know that I have one board member who has already expressed to me that he would like to have an opportunity to revisit the conversation from last night. He missed the previous discussion meeting, so he was a little out of the loop. I don't think he knew that there was a meeting today. If this board is willing to wait 2 weeks, we can have a conversation. It won't be me, because I won't be there, but we can have a discussion with the board and get very direct impact on comments on why just the yellow, why not all of the blue, why not all of the northwest area. I don't have an issue with putting that on the next agenda.
So from a process standpoint, the meeting today was not, I mean, if everybody had been 100%, we would take a vote, but we knew that last meeting you weren't going to be at 100%. So we do have another meeting for the 13th of October.
It'll be in the auditorium at the county commission room. That's over the Williamson County Administrative Complex, where you get your car tax. There's a big meeting room back there that I don't know that it'll seat any more than here, but that's the next step that we would go through here. So I would jump ahead of you a little bit, Greg, here, because at the last meeting, if I remember correctly, it was Spring Hill and Thompson Station, everyone was in agreement with their plans. Is that correct? Brentwood, Nolensville, their growth maps at the last meeting we had.
Everyone but those two.
Yes,
Yes.
everyone but those two.
Right.
So I would suggest, Greg, that we send this back. Are you all meeting before 2 weeks?
No, we meet on the 2nd.
On the 2nd of October? So could you get this on your docket and have that meeting and have that discussion about the blue area, or at least attempt? I can't direct you to do that.
No, absolutely.
And how about Thompson Station? We still haven't had a discussion on them this morning, but I'm sure there's some areas here too that we heard from the people.
No, I think that makes sense, Mayor. Is it safe to say that if we went around the room, we'd have similar comments on the area to the west? To the east? Yeah, thank you. I mean, we can go around and do this again, but.
You got one over here.
One quick thing on the.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
One thing that might help us, I know it's Murray County, but Pam made reference to what's happening just south of there in Murray County. I'd like to understand that context a little bit too, in terms of what's already happening there and how that drives it. You don't need to answer it now, but that's something we can have as additional information to put this in context, I think.
We are the only, so this is a mapping issue, Greg. We sent the map in with the Murray County UGB, and it keeps getting taken off and not put on the map. But we keep trying to show that we were marrying up our Murray UGB with our Williamson UGB. So if we send a map in with Murray County on it, would you please delineate it, because that will help. And we'll also put the development, at least some portion of the development area that's already identified. And that's it, we can do that as well.
No, that now makes sense. We didn't do that because we wanted to be clear, we don't have any control over the UGB in Murray County, but for the purpose of context, we're happy to do that. Yeah.
So I'm gonna make a comment, and I'm gonna take off my Nolensville hat just a minute and put on my Spring Hill resident hat, and former manager of Spring Hill resident hat. I think maybe I can say this for Pam and others can. I think there's a little bit of trepidation when you look at the long-term planning on Spring Hill's part, and maybe even Thompson Station's part, in where are the boundaries that ultimately become between the two. When we go back and we look at the discussion on the interchange of where those boundaries were going to be, certainly Spring Hill thought they were going to be initially in one place, but changed and we went further south. At that time, I can remember Mayor Napier complaining to me that we had done a bait and switch with them because we didn't go to the north, but it was those Grand Valley residents who didn't want us to go to the north. So to me, there's a little trepidation there. If we don't take it, if we don't have it in our UGB, then the other one will. And it will lose those boundaries. So I'm just going to state, if we as a committee, you as a committee, I'm not a voting member, if you as a committee ultimately decide that whether it be on Spring Hills, east or west, and even Thompson Stations on some of theirs, if you decide that they're not inside of their UGB, that we also don't allow the other one to add it into their UGB. That's I think is a fundamental piece of trepidation between both governments. I also saw a little bit of that with Thompson Station and Franklin, where Franklin was opting out a piece, and Thompson Station wanted to add it into theirs. So anyway, that's out there. So let's acknowledge it and throw it out there. And And if this board wants to limit it, then let's not allow the others to take them.
And can I address that? I think, Christie, if I could call upon you, we're trying to work those interlocal agreements through the legal process that addresses some of the things that Victor said.
The one interlocal agreement between all of the cities in the county addresses a few things: the annexation, the revisiting, that type of thing. If there's opportunities for interlocal between an individual jurisdiction and another, that's a different matter that can be addressed but isn't currently on the table. That makes sense.
But as you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the long and short of it is, if Spring Hill and Thompson Station in this example wanted to do interlocal agreements between themselves, we would understand that. But again, this committee is exactly what it is. It's a committee that's structured under Tennessee Code Annotated that allows you to do for future planning for our community, our whole county. And if this committee can't get to that resolution, then unfortunately that's where we have to stop. And and to people, what that simply means, you're right back into the old model that you will have some citizens that want to be annexed, others that don't. That's hard on schools, that's hard on infrastructure. Well, preach to you city folks that have to do that as much as we do. But interlocals can be worked out, and they'll have to be honored. And again, we're looking at this every 5 years, hopefully. Other questions? Yes, Judy.
When Spring Hill goes back in the 1st of October to work on cutting some of this out, they need to also remember the east side. There's most of those residents don't want to be in, because if you cut that out, you're still going to have these other issues. And the side of Thompson Station, they need to revisit and look at this information the residents have given them about who wants to be in and out. And I'll look at that. Thank you.
That was my question. We can go around the room again and ask what you think about this area as well. But my question earlier, are we going to hear the same thing, that you've not heard enough compelling information to allow you to make a choice to bring that in? Is that correct? And I realize that there is some opposition to that simply because people don't want to be in, and that's their business. But is that what we're saying to Spring Hill, is go back and do some more looking at this and do some more looking at this, bring us back more information about the rationale, bring us back better maps so we can see what's being proposed, consider changes if appropriate? Is that the direction that we're taking from this? John?
Judy's older than mine. Not gonna give it up.
I would also, there was a comment about not knowing exactly what was, I know because I had some involvement in the interchange in Spring Hill in my previous position. And I know what the federal requirements are to put money there. And so I would like to also know kind of what the expectations are for mainly the east side of I-65. And, we heard someone said that that's all been approved. I doubt whether FAA has approved the new airport in that location without anybody knowing about it. But maybe they have. But I think we need to know what that is, what the expectations are. Maybe you have a plan, but there's got to be some expectations. You had to have some reason to spend that money that goes to the east side, not just the west side, because I don't think the Fed would have funded that. They didn't have an east side reason for that to be developed. So we should know what that is before we make that decision.
Good to have you. Hold your applause. We know you want to clap, but we're trying to get out of here.
I'm not asking for more information in terms of why to include it. My ask would be taken out.
No, I appreciate that. And that's, I want to be clear, I think we heard a mix of reactions. Some was clearly take it out if people don't want to be in, they shouldn't be in. But I think others were saying, I need to hear more rationale for it. Am I hearing that correctly? Are we are we asking Spring Hill to bring back more information, good maps, more analysis of the issues that you've raised for the October 13th meeting? Is that?
I'll speak to that since I'm one of the folks who said I had more questions. My questions surround the plan to provide infrastructure, sewer, police, fire. But it seems quite apparent to me that this group is overwhelming me to the point of, hey, in this particular example, remove it. So I want to make sure I honor that as well. If it's apparent that the group as a whole wants to have a recommendation, I'll honor that.
I guess the question that Spring Hill would have is, if this board is of the opinion that if the citizen doesn't want in, are you not going to recommend that it go forward? And if that is the unilateral opinion, then we need to know that now so that that can be the deliberation that we have.
That's a fair question, and Mayor, because if the sentiment of a majority of this group is it doesn't matter what information you bring back, if people don't want to be in, we're not going to vote to keep them in, then let's not have them go do all that work to do that. That's what I'm trying to get a sense of, is what's the consensus of the committee, if we can arrive at that. Mayor?
No, I'll be clear. Doesn't matter what information comes back.
Right.
So.
Well, let's do this one more time, if we could. Let's have the committee, just one, voice your opinion. Are you looking for more information, or are you ready to make a decision for the purpose of taking it to a public hearing now? Everybody understand that question? Okay?
In fairness to Spring Hill, we need to hear their justification for the annexations. Without that, we're hearing one side, we're hinting at this morning, but we don't have any details of that justification. And that's what we really need if we're going to do this fairly and equitable to both parties.
So more information.
I'll echo Bob's comments there. And the way that I'm sort of approaching it is that, where we want changes, explanations for why the status quo, again, 20 years ago, I know some things have changed, but understanding from the communities why these intuitively areas along the interstate make more sense to me. I don't have to hear too much about it. I see infrastructure there, but the West does not make as much sense to me, so information is helpful. And not having it right now, guys are going to say I just can't support it, but I would like to understand more information and more about Spring Hills and ultimately Thompson Station's plans so that we can be better informed.
More information. Commissioner.
I had to vote no, and it's only because of Thompson Station and Spring Hill, because there's so many residents here that did not want it, and it's their land. They should have the right to say that. It's their land. These people that live in the city, some of these elected officials in the city, they would want another city coming through, other people coming through, destroying their home with new roads and things like that. So I don't care if I need more information. I've got all the information I need, and I say no.
I do have a hard time as Nolensville telling another jurisdiction within the county, you can't do something. Because I feel like the local jurisdiction should have more, it's obviously their say over the growth of their town. But I have major concerns over overall growth in Williamson County and the impact on police and fire has been a big expense for Nolensville that we have had to put a lot of money into. So not knowing what you don't know, because it hadn't been a part of Spring Hill's conversations, if there was additional information, I'm not saying I would not consider that, but with what I have today, I don't think that portion of the other resolutions.
But you'd be open to more information?
Yes, but it would have
I understand.
to be compatible.
It's a heavy lift.
I'd like to see more information.
Yes, more information.
The same.
Yeah.
More information.
I don't need more information. I listen to my people in my community, and I feel like we need to listen to the homeowners here. So I would not support either one of those areas.
More information.
Anyone in the Sept's room?
I already spoke to it.
Well, that was clear as mud, isn't it? Well, Pam, I think you hear the message. I think that, you know, there is clearly two schools of thought here, that there are a number of folks who are ready to go now. It doesn't matter about new information, but a lot of people want to hear more information. So, and we're applying that same to both sides, correct? Okay. Good? Good for moving on? Okay, well, we're close to our time, and we haven't heard from Thompson Station yet. Mayor, how do you want to proceed?
Yes. Who's presenting for you, Mayor? One of the two of you? Come on now. Let's get this. And let's go ahead and get this through the processes, even though it's a little lengthy. If anyone needs a restroom break, straight out the back, men and women's back there.
We'll keep going.
Station and keep going. So we're going to get finished with it.
Thank you, Mayor. So my name is Mayor Brian Stover. We want to talk about a couple of the parcels that were in question last time. I'm going to talk about this property up here. Michael's going to talk about the other properties on 431. Some of the concerns were addressed at our last BOMA meeting that were presented by this meeting of why we would want to annex in this piece of property. A couple of things we want to go back to. The property owner has asked us to bring the property into Thompson Station. That was due to Franklin denying services to them. They came to the town of Thompson Station. We can provide services to them. They are actually right beside one of our drip field areas, which is right around in here. So it's fairly easy for us to service that area. But within that, we had negotiated some stipulations by the developer that we felt were comfortable for what we could do. One of those was a max of 150 homes on that piece of property. So what it would do, it would put it in zoning of D2, what we call D2, but they would be maxed out at 150 homes. Technically, that puts them at about 1.5 homes per acre. Is that correct?
That's what the D2 zoning allows for. They would be under that. Max.
They'd be under that. So another condition for them to do that is to improve the road conditions per the town's suggestion, not what the developer wants to do. We would oversee that. We would kind of go through and tell them the improvements that we would want. The other thing is the 55 acres of land that they're willing to give the town of Thompson Station for drip field land. Now, to give you a brief overview of why that is important to the town of Thompson Station. We are one of the few cities and towns in the state of Tennessee that is required to discharge underground. We are not allowed to discharge into a stream. TDEC will not approve that. In order for our systems to work, we have to have land. So when I was elected into office in 2017, there really was no plan on how to acquire the land, how to do it. We went through an entire process. We had to go buy 100 acres. Unfortunately, it didn't yield a whole lot of property that we could use for that. Since then, we have gone in and changed that. The developers are now required to bring us that land, or they pay a cost in lieu of. Those are important to us for a few reasons. One, not to build more homes, but two, to build commercially. The town of Thompson Station has to have commercial growth to sustain itself. The reason that is, a wise man told me when I was elected back in 2017, the county cannot provide all services to the town. I think that's what you told me, right? All right. With that, I've heard a lot of things about police and fire and everything else. One of the things that I took charge of when I became mayor back in January is that we have to look at creating our own police and fire
long-term and strategically from a town standpoint of how we're going to do that. We do that by growing our town responsibly. Now, I understand some people don't understand our zoning and what we're doing. We're trying to preserve as much land as possible. That's why you see those cluster developments the way they are. I grew up there. I understand it. Been here pretty much my entire life. I understand some folks don't understand how we're trying to do that, but that's our goal. One of our achievements that we've accomplished this year is to actually acquire land to build a new town hall. Within the reason of building that was future expansion to house police and fire, which is a state requirement that you got to have. That unfortunately I didn't even understand you had to have that separate building of what you're wanting to do. We're growing as a town. We have to do these particular things. But with this piece of property right here, the landowner did ask us to come in. So that's why we feel it's important to include it in our UGB. All right, I'll let Micah take the other part.
And so the other thing that's been kind of brought up, sorry, I'm not as tall as the mayor. I have to move the mic down a little bit. The other areas, particularly on the west side, but also adjacent to the OZAD property, we've heard from a lot of the subdivisions that would create, and this is what I talked about last time, some of those donut holes in the urban growth area. So kind of some of those gaps that could be created in the plan. The town is proposing that through the interlocal agreement that Christy talked about, that we put in there that existing neighborhoods can't, one individual request, if they're in an existing subdivision, they would not be able to do that unless there was kind of unanimous consent from that neighborhood. Another thing that we would propose through the interlocal agreement is to not connect to existing roadways, any new development. That's been the town's practice in previous instances where there was a development adjacent to a subdivision that was either developed in the county or is currently in the county. Even when there were road connections right to the property line, the Planning Commission has, in each of those instances, chosen not to connect because of concerns from the neighbors. So we would propose putting that, the town's practice has been not to do that, but we would propose putting that into the interlocal agreement to just take that off the table. We would be open to looking at other things if people are, still concerned about any kind of annexation process. Put it in the interlocal agreement that the only way annexation can happen is through property owner request. So I think those are the ways that, the mayor mentioned what was discussed at our previous board meeting. It focused mainly on the OZAD property, which is on the screen right here. The reason the board didn't get into a lot of discussion about the other properties was because of the town's belief and hope that concerns related to any of the other existing properties can be dealt with through that interlocal agreement process to hopefully alleviate any of those outstanding concerns.
Did that all make sense to the committee? Questions? So if I'm here, this one's not working, is it? Batteries. There we go. So let me just ask a clarifying question, or what I think I heard you all say is two things. Is one, that the town would be willing to commit through whatever legal mechanism is appropriate not to annex those properties that are already developed, number one, right?
Yes.
Yes, and number two, that the density that would occur on that property under your current plans would essentially be the same as what would occur under the county.
Yes, from what I understand from talking to Mike, the 150 units is equivalent to what the county zoning would allow for the overall OZAD property. So that's why we put those additional stipulations on that property through an existing agreement that we have with that property owner to limit the overall density. As the mayor mentioned, the way that our zoning is structured is to have a very high open space requirements. We have 45% open space requirements for residential developments. I would argue that, as far as I know, that's the highest open space requirement in the county. It may be in the state. I've worked in a lot of places. I've never seen an open space requirement that high. And that's because it allows for, as the mayor mentioned, that cluster development. So we have smaller lot sizes in zoning, in our D2 zoning, D1 and D2 zoning, than the overall. It's not 1 unit per 1 acre. We have smaller lot size because we cluster for open space preservation. So the additional stipulations related to additional open space, that could include a town park. We're going through a parks master plan right now. And we're looking to see if that would work in a park system to buffer some of the existing development. And then the realignment of West Harpeth Road to the town's current standards. That's part of the town's major thoroughfare plan. And through the annexation of this property, the developer is committed to do that.
Coordinating committee, clarifying questions?
I think I have a question for Mike so that I can understand. Because the way I don't think I understand if that matches up with what our county would allow. So I want to understand under what mechanism the county would allow that much density. I may not be interested in space, but if you could just explain that to me.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So the area that's shaded there in blue is currently zoned MGA 1, and that 1 represents 1 unit per acre. That's a maximum allowable density in that area. And that's pretty consistent with the density of the existing surrounding neighborhoods.
And so that area was not changed over to 1 to 5. I just don't have our county plan in front of us. I know we've taken so much of our county to 1 to 5, but this area remains 1 to 1.
That is correct, because it was always within a UGB.
Thank you.
You bet.
My question was somewhat the same thing. I understand that property has a county-approved plan, and what is the density on that?
Mayor Moore, you're right. The property was approved for at the concept plan level by the county just within this past year. That was lower density. It was maybe 0.3 or 0.4 units per acre. And that reflected, of course, them using septic systems versus some brand of public sewer. But the underlying zoning itself is that 1 unit per acre maximum.
And to be, yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so you're saying it's the same, but I heard 1.5 units per acre from Thompson Station, and I heard 1 unit per acre from the county. So how are they the same help me with math?
My understanding is that they're proposing no more than 1 unit per acre for the overall property, but I could be wrong.
So the zoning would be D2, which allows 1.5 units per acre by right. We have an agreement with the property owner that would lower that to 150 units, which would be the equivalent of 1 unit per acre.
Other questions? Clark, does everybody understand?
I've now got it clear.
Yeah.
Sorry, y'all, I've now got to clarify the question. Am I right, based on this discussion, that in essence, this property is already grandfathered into existing UGBs and the ship has sailed, to use another vernacular? Regardless of whether it's in county or in any UGB, because there's already been an approval? Is that correct?
The town hasn't approved anything on it because it's currently in Franklin's urban growth boundary. So all of this discussion, we didn't even discuss anything with the property owner until Franklin had sent us the map showing that it had been taken out of their urban growth boundary.
Yeah, what's creating potential confusion is that right now it's in Franklin's urban growth boundary, but it's in the county's jurisdiction. It's in the county's zoning jurisdiction. Franklin said they didn't want it in their urban growth boundary, suggested that it should stay in county no urban growth boundary, Thompson Station once in
Has
there.
there already been a development plan that's been approved that renders this?
Mike?
So the county did approve a development plan, but, you know, our understanding is that rather than build that, they're interested in getting annexed by Thompson Station.
Everybody understand all that? Yes, Eric?
I have one more clarification on process you talked about. I believe Mike was talking about precluding annexation by referendum. We're not agreeing to that. We've had lots of residents avail themselves of what the state law allows to come into the community by referendum. We've had that happen for about 1,000 acres in our southeast. So I see no reason why we would all decide that. You want to do that, that's great. You guys can choose to do that as Thompson Station, but I would not advocate that that becomes a rule across the county, because that's a property owner right issue too. Because there are people that have chosen to say, I want to be in Franklin, and they've approached us, and that's one of the mechanisms they can use. So I would not support that, because I just think that's one of the property owner rights the state's put in place, and we ought to maintain that.
And my understanding is Thompson Station is not recommending that as part of the overall intergovernmental agreement, that could be an intergovernmental
That's something I
agreement.
heard, that you're talking about that for the whole agreement amongst us. That's not where
No.
I would be, for sure.
No, and that's not what y'all have proposed, is it?
We're putting on the table for discussion for either in the
I'm
full
saying that.
interlocal
Okay.
or in a separate interlocal with the county.
Did you hear that part, Eric? It could be, he's suggesting it's possible that could be a separate interlocal agreement just between Thompson Station
Yeah,
and
if
the county.
you all want to pursue that, that's fine.
Right.
I think that is just limiting from how we've been working with property owners for several years now. And that just wouldn't be where we would go.
Okay. Any more clarifying questions? Make sure we understand what we're deliberating here. If not, then can you provide some direction? Again, what we'd like to hear is direction from what we do with this property in the plan. And if you need more information, like you did with Spring Hill, that's fine. But what's the direction that the committee is inclined to do?
Refresh my memory how big that piece of property is.
150 acres, I think.
Yeah, it's right at 100, maybe just like a smidge under 150 acres.
Is the 55 acres part of it?
Yes.
Is going to Driftfield?
Yes.
So it's really 95 developable acres that's turning into 150 units. Right?
Which is why our cluster development standard allows for the smaller lot sizes, because we have that 45% open space requirement which is.
But the 55 acres isn't going to be a park, it's going to be a Driftfield.
Not all of it.
Okay.
We still have to get the soils tested.
Okay.
They have to go through the entire process, if they don't drip, they don't drip, we can't use them. But since the drip field. So we still have to have the land tested for soil testing. So if it drips, it drips. We can use it. If not, we use it for parkland. I think they're already proposing to do another park on the property, correct? So the nice thing is we already have drip field on next to it. The connection to it is quite easy to go over there and do that.
Okay. I'm trying to give you all time to think about it, process a little bit, because again, we'd like to have some direction, and we can maybe go around the room again and just take individual thoughts, if that's okay. I'd like to hear what those are. Yes, Mayor.
Before we move on, the area where the First Bank Amphitheater is, I don't think we've discussed anything about that. Could you address that?
I think we did. Yes, Micah talked about that piece of property earlier. That's where we're willing to enter into an agreement, an interlocal. that the properties would not be annexed in unless it was 100% resident approval on those. Is that correct? So the interlocal agreement that we're proposing that we would enter into, we would not connect to any of those neighborhoods unless all of the residents of any affected subdivision wanted to enter into the Thompson Station UGB, correct? So what we're doing is we're limiting what we can do and allowing the residents to have the voice to be able to do that.
Well, is there a resident that is a developer out there who would be for, I've just been shown this pink area, and if that's a developer who's asking to be annexed in, then how would that be handled?
I don't have that piece of paper, so I'm not exactly sure what it is.
Well, and we talked to, I mean, I can't answer specifically about that individual property that's in paint, but yes, we've talked to people that want to be in the urban growth boundary and people that want to be out, and it kind of goes to what I was talking about last time. If we took, there's some areas that want to be in, that if we took that create kind of the edge, that there would be donut holes in the urban growth boundary if we took properties on the inside of that out. So if that makes sense.
Okay, let's do this. I'm going to start over here with Jason this time, and let's just go around. I want to hear everybody's thoughts on this.
My thoughts surround the comments I made earlier about Spring Hill. It's really in the form of a question. I recognize that your property tax rate is, I think, the lowest in the county, if I'm not mistaken. My question is, do you have any long-term plans to provide any additional services, police, fire, et cetera? Along that theme of what I talked about the offset of county government, knowing that when growth comes, county has to fund schools. And the county government has set up some growth standards with a minimum of 5 acres, et cetera. And my fundamental concern is if there's no services that offset that county expense, does it in essence circumvent the county's plan for growth if we don't provide any additional services? So I mean, that's a big question B, but ultimately my question is what are y'all's long-term plans?
To answer your question is, 2 months ago, I set up advisory committees for the rest of my board for budgeting, CIP, long-term plans. I will create a police department. It won't be tomorrow, it won't be next year, but the plans will be put in place. We have to have one in the town of Thompson Station. We're too big not to have our own. Now, to the size of what that's going to be, I can't answer that question. We have to look at it long-term. I think I could poll everyone in this room, every mayor, and they could probably tell me what the cost of a police department is. And it's a big bill. I mean, I'm the son of a retired police officer. I know what it costs. We have to plan for it. Part of that is creating the town hall that we're doing to house something like that to be able to move forward. So the planning is in place. I would hope that we could do a long-term strategic plan of how we're going to do those. It's going to have to be one or the other. I mean, I'm on a 10-year task force to look at the fire department of the county the next 10 years of how we're going to grow that. And within that conversation, I have to look at my own situation, how we create those moving forward to provide the services for the residents of Thompson Station. So yes, the plans will be in place.
Mayor Anderson.
So this area by the first bank amphitheater, is that part of the plan to fund, to get, that there's a proposed possible development there? Is that part of the plan to fund?
We don't know. I'm looking at your map right here. I'm not sure what the pink is, quite honestly. It's nothing that I'm aware of in the town. Mike is not aware of it. Now, you got to understand, in certain parts of that area, they're still developing in the county. There's certain developers that are developing off Bethesda Road, other areas that's not part of the town. So I don't know what that is, quite honestly. I would have to go back and
To
look.
be clear, that's not your map. That was a map that was handed out this morning.
And to answer your question, no. I mean, we have, in our comprehensive planning process, we did look at the areas in the urban growth boundary, but any of the services, the additional service areas, that would be to provide the areas that are that are part of the incorporated parts of the town. So no, we would not look for, the Thompson Station has never looked for development to drive services like that. It would be to create new services for the current citizens of the town.
So, Mayor, where do you come out on this issue? What are your thoughts on this issue, which is a different area?
Well, my opinion on, I don't understand why Franklin is removing part of the urban growth boundary and wanting it to move to Thompson Station. I guess, in my opinion, the citizens probably wouldn't want that because Thompson Station cannot provide services. Plus, with the fire rating at Franklin being the highest and Thompson Station being the lowest, the property taxes would, the property insurance would skyrocket. So, I mean, that's my opinion.
And just as background, hold on. To clarify, the city of Franklin, oh, you've got the mic there, Eric. Go ahead and clarify that.
Clarify, hopefully help shed light on that. We are not able to provide the sanitary sewer service. That request was made of us about a year ago, and we denied that because we aren't able to extend the services. So that's why we removed it. The property owner also has to be removed from the urban growth boundary, so it's both our inability to serve and the request of the property owner. So it's not a give it to Thompson Station, it is a we cannot serve it, therefore it's not going to be in our urban growth boundary, we're not going to plan for it. So it's just a reality check of what we can serve and what we cannot.
Right. And that property owner does want to be in the Thompson Station.
And Thompson Station can provide sewer service to that property.
Come on, let's let the committee work. Mayor Anderson, did you have anything else?
No, I think I see it clearly.
Okay. Eric Woman?
Thank you. So I've been consistent. If the property owner wants to be in the UGB, I'd be okay with that. My concern is the plan when you bring this into, and I assume since they want to be in the UGB, it'll be annexed fairly quickly. So there is an approved plan that has, it sounds like, one home for every 5 acres in the county. When it comes into Thompson Station, all of a sudden it becomes upzone. And there's a plan for this drip field, which sounds to me like, and I know it's not 100% right, but it's akin to a very large septic system. Is that correct?
So basically what happens is there's piping built under the ground, and that's where all the water, the clean, treated water is discharged under the soil.
Okay.
So you have different pockets of that. If you look out in the county, of certain subdivisions that are being built, they have their own systems on site. Some of them actually have their own drip field land. Basically what it looks like is a big box of really, really green grass. And that's kind of how it translates to that.
So it's similar, not exactly.
Not exactly, no, because the water is treated at a separate plant. We're actually in the process of building a whole new plant. It's a $29 million water processing plant that will actually treat the water cleaner than what we have it right now.
Okay. So what happens if this drip field, I assume it has to perk or something to that effect. What happens if that doesn't occur?
We go back on the search for more land. We currently own 37 acres of land. It's called the Alexander property. It's actually right behind my subdivision where I live out off Christ Lane. we can use that land, but we still have to accumulate more per TDEC requirements. TDEC requires us to have a certain amount of land to be able to operate wastewater systems. So you have to go out and search those until we ever get some type of agreement work with them where we're allowed to discharge into an open stream. Or until we come to an agreement with TDEC that the use of gray water is permitted to use with fire departments, irrigation, sprinklers. Right now, it's not permitted. That's what we're working diligently to try and get them to change their procedures to allow us to do that.
Okay, thank you for answering that. As it relates to, I assume that you all have been provided with these notarized statements from all the different residents that don't wish to be in the UGB. What are you? So you've got this one landowner that wants to be in. What about the balance of these folks that do not want to be in the UGB?
I think that's where Mike had discussed that earlier, as us working through an agreed interlocal agreement. Whereas the goal, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're trying not to create donut holes. We're trying not to do that. That's our ultimate goal. But what we're trying to do is also listen to what's being said. We will enter into an interlocal agreement. We will not connect to any of the subdivisions. We will only allow annexation of that land if all the residents agree. That's what we plan to do.
Right. What about the homes, pieces of property that are not the subdivisions over around the amphitheater? I happen to know a couple of fellow deputies in the county that I talked specifically with, and they do not want to be a part of Thompson Station. It's a generational farm that wanted to stay that way and do not want to be part of the UGB.
Yeah, so again, we're trying not to, where we have been able to take out properties that didn't want to be without creating that gap in the urban growth boundary, we've tried to do that. So that again goes back to the mayor's, the donut hole. You know, the growth plan, it was said before, is a planning document. If someone wants to be annexed, it gives them the option to ask for it. It doesn't give the town any ability to go out and annex that property. So that's why we address that.
The packet here, it speaks predominantly to this one parcel. Feedback is I can't vote in favor of bringing people, especially these folks, of all of these affidavits notarized that don't want to be part of the UGB. I understand that they would only be annexed if they came. However, we'll be back in 5 years as discussed, and if they want to be in at that point, they can want to be part of UGB. But if they don't want to be part of UGB, they're not voters of Thompson Station now. They're in the county. I can't be in favor of that.
I think I would have to, one is, if I would like this piece of property that is developed to not be upzoned, I think it should be developed using current county standards. And if the developer can do that within the UGB, I would probably be okay. But if you're upzoning and you're adding more lots than what the zoning currently has been approved, I think I would have concerns with that. I'm gonna let them speak to what the board, BOMA, really wanted. I'm gonna have to go with, being an ex-member of BOMA, I'm gonna have to go with what BOMA said in their opinion at that point in time.
We're still supporting what our board asked, which is to put it in the county. I think that is a balance between I still think it's higher density and the county standards. So that's where we are. That's the direction we have from our board.
I would concur that the board said that we would support it being in the county developed based on what the current approved plan was by the county.
Again, I do have a difficult time with different jurisdictions trying to dictate to you. I don't want to be in a position of dictating to you what your urban growth boundary should be. But the plan for service for police and fire is a huge component, and I haven't seen your all's plans for that, or that you all would be able to get that on the ground before the next 5 years when we would revisit it anyways. So I don't see why it has to be included now in the urban growth.
Stay in the county.
I'd be inclined to say the county certainly has faith and knowledge and just more intimate knowledge of our planning department, but do appreciate Thompson Station providing this additional information to help me. I can't tell you that I know exactly how to vote on it right now, but I do appreciate that y'all have come with the information that I need. I just need a little bit of time to process.
No comment.
I like so many of them. I think Mayor, it is bringing the zoning up, so I would recommend it if you so. I disagree with Franklin giving it up and telling you what to do with it, but if it comes to us, I'm willing to accept it. That makes sense. I don't think you have, if it's in their urban growth boundary and they give it up, they don't put conditions on it, they just give it up. And then we'll take it into account.
Okay, so I'm hearing, oh, yes. Okay.
So this is a question that's broader, but it came up through this. If I heard Eric right, Franklin wants to preserve the right to annex by referendum, even if it is not in your urban growth boundary? Only if it's in your urban growth. In your urban growth boundary.
With the updated urban growth.
With the updated urban growth boundaries. Okay, so then the agreement that we're proposing to the interlocal would be that we can only annex by referendum if it's in the urban growth. Is that correct? Okay. So for Spring Hill, and I know we're talking about Thompson Station now, but for us, not having any urban growth boundary at all currently would then prohibit us from expanding our borders outside of their existing limits right now. And so we would have zero capacity to expand into the Williamson County area, even though we have some natural growth in that area. So just a pause for consideration under all that.
So where does that leave you, committee? And you heard individuals. That one sounded a little less certain than the discussion about the previous issues in Spring Hill. So I'm looking for some guidance, a little more guidance from the committee about this. You want to think about it more? We're going to come back on October 13th to revisit the Spring Hill issue anyway. So is that something you want to think more about? Can Thompson Station provide more information, more maps? And I understand some of you have already concluded individually what your position is, but we need to try to get a sense of where the group is. Okay, so I conclude from that we need to think more about that. You all need to think more about that. Maybe we come at it fresh on October 13th. Is there any more information that the town would like to bring forth based on what you heard today? Is there anything, go back to the workshop with it? Where do you think that leaves the town?
I mean, we can go back and definitely review the plans as stated and see what else we might be able to do.
Yeah.
yeah, the town can go back and review everything.
The town's willing to go back and look at it more. Is that right? I mean, we've been at this almost 3 hours now, so it may be that it's just needs to come at it fresh. Is that fair? Okay, so we are not at this point, we, the consultant and the staff that, your planners group, we are not making any changes to the maps at this point. Clear? Everybody good with that? I think Spring Hill, do you have your direction then? Okay, and y'all have your direction? Okay. Is there anything else on the agenda that we wanted to talk about? Public hearing dates. Yeah, so we're trying to stay on a schedule here. So we're hoping that on October 13th, we can bring this back and put it to bed for you all, and then move into the public hearing process. Yeah, let me stop there for a second.
Real quick on the schedule.
October 13th is in the midst of fall break for Williamson County Schools. I don't know if that is relevant to folks in terms of being here.
I don't know that-
Or the public that is interested.
I don't know that we looked at that area. You gonna be here, Jason? Are you out? Please. We had a hard time.
I'm more concerned about the public
I
being
appreciate
someplace
that.
else.
Yeah, we had a hard time coming up with that date. So, and we're trying to keep you on schedule. As you know, the clock is running to be able to get through this. So, I don't know if we want to go back and look at that more, but we had a hard time arriving at that date.
It'd be my preference that we go back and look at that date. I'd want as much community involvement as possible, because, this is impacting these folks. And if it's fall break, many people are out of town.
Okay.
All we can do is try to get a quorum here.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go back and try to look at it. In the meantime, we do have tentative dates for the public hearings, but maybe we shouldn't put those out there until we figure out what the coordinating committee date is going to be. We're on a schedule where by mid-December, you all need to be forwarding this to the jurisdictions. That's when your clock stops running. So we have flexibility, we have time, but not time to, we still need to be moving efficiently. Okay, that it from my mayor?
I'll entertain the motion. Thank you. It is 11:29.